Oh, hello everyone. I want to especially welcome you to the CGWCI Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Response Desk. My name is Ayobata Courage Uyoyo. I'm the Executive Director of the Courageous Girls Women and Children Initiative. And with me today is Fikih Obaro. He's the Program Manager, FIDA Nigeria. Today we're going to be talking about sexual and gender-based violence and the VAPP law. So I will just give him the floor to tell us first about sexual and gender-based violence.
Okay, so good morning and thank you, Courage, for having me on this live broadcast. And so we're discussing basically on sexual and gender-based violence. And so in the layman's words, sexual and gender-based violence is violence against a gender. So it could be either a male or a female. And so gender is what society terms, a person, either you are a male or a female, and ascribe certain roles to that person. And so society has made us male, society has made us females, and society has made us to be the way we want to be. And so in this context, any violence that is perpetrated against the person, against a gender, that is harmful and that is repugnant to the laws of the land can be termed as sexual and gender-based violence. Now, gender-based violence comes in various forms, and so it's not only limited to some that we do know, as the case may be. And so gender-based violence, you can have forms of gender-based violence such as rape, which is very, very popular, which is a forceful desire against the person's will to have sexual relations with that person. You have indecent assaults. Indecent assaults basically it's a lower form of rape, but nevertheless, it's that you are assaulting a person without the person giving you this right, or without the person giving you that consent to do what you need to do. But however, you've not had penetration. And the difference between rape and indecent assault is that there must be evidence of penetration. Now, we will go into the VAPP law, but even before we go into the VAPP law, penetration, which basically is simply defined as having a male organ into the female genital, as the case may be. And that's how rape has always been defined. And there's been a little bit difficult, to prove rape, because certainly you have to prove penetration, and penetration itself, you need evidence to prove penetration. But however, we now have what we call the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act that has not even left the issues of penetration to be not to be limited only to the female genital, but also basically even you have oral penetration. So when you have penetration that is done via the mouth, you have penetration even through the ears. And as long as it is proven, then that is constituted as rape. So you say rape it's a very important form of gender-based violence, because consent is not given, as the case may be. You have indecent assaults, you have intimate partners violence, which you call your domestic violence, husband beats wife, wife beats husband, as the case may be. And you have harmful cultural practices. These are cultural norms that try to violate the rights of persons, especially women, because women and children are what we call the marginalized and vulnerable population, because of the way society has tempted them to be. And so they don't have rights that male have. And so when you have harmful cultural practices such as widow practices, that ensure that women have to go through some sort of torture, as the case may be, as a result of the death of their husbands, then that certainly is a form of sexual and gender-based violence, as the case may be. When you have female genital mutilation, where women have their parts genitally mutilated, it's a form of sexual and gender-based violence, because at the end of the day, it leads to issues of VVF, and also leads to other medical issues that are not right according to what we see generally. And so that's in that form. You have child marriage, which is another form. Children are supposed to be given up to the age of consent to determine who they want to be with. And so once you have a child that is married off below the age of 18, which is a statutory age for consent, then you can call that also child marriage, which is also punishable under the laws of the land. And you have also defilements. Basically, that is when a major, which is a person who is above the age of 18, sleeps with a minor who is below the age of 18 also. So when you have such circumstances and the rest, you can call that defilement, because that person is below the age of 18 years, and so the person is defiled, as the case may be. The defilement and rape has to do with the age. Once the person is 18 years and above, it is rape. Once the person is below 18 years, it is defilement, as we can call it. So we also have some other minor, but also issues such as probably breast ironing, which is popular in some parts of Nigeria, as the case may be. And so there are various forms, and these are just some specific forms of sexual and gender-based violence that basically are in progress. But you don't also still restrict the fact that sexual and gender-based violence is a component of gender-based violence. So it certainly means that sexual and gender-based violence is not really gender-based violence, as it's just a component of gender-based violence. As we said, gender-based violence is violence against a particular gender. And so when you see women not giving political opportunities, when you see women not giving economic opportunities, when you see women not having accessibility to credits, when you see women not having accessibility to facilities, women not having accessibility to seedlings, women not playing leadership roles in their position, they are all forms of gender-based violence. So please, let's not only limit the fact that gender-based violence is only about rape and female genital circumcision, as the case may be. It's all comprising. And then gender-based violence, does it happen a day against a woman? No, as we said, it's gender, so it happens against either gender, as the case may be. And so even a man can be violated, a woman can perpetrate gender-based violence against a man also. So when you hear that women are beating men, it's part of gender-based violence. When you also hear that women are also causing obstruction, and women are raping their sons and raping their nephews and houseboys that stay with them in their houses, those are all forms of gender-based violence. So can a woman be arrested for gender-based violence? Yes. Can a man be arrested for perpetrating gender-based violence? Yes. And so that goes on to the legal frameworks that govern gender-based violence in the country. And so generally, and for the purpose of this discussion, we're just going to talk of the VAPP law and the child rights law. So the VAPP law comes in from the VAPP Act, which is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which was signed into law in 2015, and about 34 states out of the 36 states of the Federation has passed that and domesticated it into their respective laws. And so I believe that I'm also speaking properly. You know that you have your Delta State VAPP law, which is operational in the state also, and there are a lot of punishments that are critical for some sexual and gender-based violence offenses that are committed. For example, rape is a criminal offense, and the person who is convicted of rape is liable to life imprisonment. That tells you how serious gender-based violence it is. That's how serious rape is. But now there's a caveat also here. You also still understand the fact that a lot of persons also want to take advantage of situations. A lot of persons also want to falsely accuse persons also for doing what they did not do under the pretext of gender-based violence. So there's also a punishment for those also that falsely accuse. So when it is termed according to the courts that the accusation level against a person is false, I think the person is also liable to about 10 years in prison with different rights for falsely accusing as another person for committing rape. However, if all evidence are proven that a person assaulted, it's committed rape or assaulted or the either gender, then there are life punishments for those persons. For rape, it is a lifetime imprisonment, but upon appeal, you could get like 25 years. But basically, it's lifetime. So it's something that we need to educate our persons and to also ensure that people have knowledge about these issues, as we said, when it is proven. And so you also have defilement, which also has about 15 years, if I'm right. And then you also have other forms of gender-based violence that are incorporated in the VAPP law. But there is something that is very, very outstanding in the VAPP law, basically, and that has to do with the fact that there is something called the sexual offences register. And so when a person is convicted or committed a sexual offense, install the sex offenders register, and such person's detail is displayed And so that tries to ensure that people are aware of such a person's family and such a person's, and also they are aware of such a person's conduct, which would also be a kind of naming and shaming, approach in the society towards deterring people from committing this kind of offences, as the case may be. And so it's also very important so that we take note of these things also, and know that even people who commit these things, it does not only end at conviction, their names are also published worldwide. What that certainly means is that the criteria of you getting a job is going to be difficult. The criteria of your family, even moving around the community or society that they are, is going to be difficult, because they will always be referred to the family that produced that rapist, the family that produced that defiler, as the case may be. And so it's important that we know this also. And so the VAPP law basically talks about protection of all forms of violence against persons. As we said, it's violence against persons. So certainly it's violence against a man, it's violence against a woman. So even if a man is guilty of this also, a woman is guilty of this also, the woman also still faces the same, consequences, as the case may be. And then you have the Child Rights Act. The Child Rights Act was promulgated in 2003, and about 30 states have passed the Child Rights Law. And so you have the Child Rights Law, which tries to protect against child marriage, which tries to protect against child labor, which also helps to protect against child trafficking, and also tries to ensure that the dignity and the best interest of the child is put into consideration in all affairs on any single thing that you do. And so when there are, when there are violations against the child, also the child's right law helps to protect the child, against these things. And I think the VAPP law and the child right law is domiciled under the Ministry of Women Affairs. That is, they work with the Ministry of Justice in terms of implementing these laws in the states. And I'm aware that some CSOs have started sharing the simplified versions of the VAPP law. So please, if you have a CSO that that has these copies, probably you can link up with them so that you can have the copies of the VAPP law, so that you can have an understanding. But you can also still go online, and you can also still Google the Delta State VAPP law, or you can Google generally. If you cannot see the Delta State VAPP law, you can Google generally the VAPP Act. The VAPP Act is what you can see online. You can Google it, and almost all you have in the Delta State VAPP law is it's a semblance of what you have in the VAPP Act. So once you understand what the VAPP Act is talking about, you can understand what the VAPP law certainly is talking about, as the case may be. And so the child rights law also is also operational in the states, and it's also operational at the national level. So when you see all acts of injuries against the child, when you see all acts of child labor, when you see children being trafficked, when you see children being molested, when you see children being turned to errand girls, errand boys, and also you see that their dignity is no longer protected, as the case may be, then certainly that such a person who is doing that is violating the right of the child, and there are punishments that are accrued, on these issues, as the case may be, related to the child's right law. And then generally, and just to end it, we have the 1999 Constitution, basically, which is the grand norm of all legal frameworks. And the 1999 Constitution talks about protection of dignity of the person, talks about rights to life, rights to freedom of expression. They also talk about the socio-economic rights of humans, of individuals, as the case may be. And so when a right is being violated, or when the right of a person is violated, then it's also an offense against the state. It's an offense against the law. Very recently, we knew that in Edo State, a husband shot his wife not too long ago for not cooking for him, and the woman's hands was amputated. And so, this is a crime against the state. It's a crime against the state. And so any criminal laws that are termed criminal in nature, they are crimes against the state. And so it's your duty, as members that have subscribed under this platform, basically, to also still spread these news and educate others, as the case may be. This will not be an exhaustive discussion, but at least for the time being, is for us to have a great understanding of what sexual and gender-based violence is, and how we can use, our various mediums in educating Nigerians, educating citizens about their rights also, as the case may be. So when there are violations, who do you meet? You have the Nigerian Police Force, certainly, who are the first responders, so you report to the Nigerian Police Force. Now, in the case of rape, it is important to note that when a person is when the victim of rape is observed, or when you find the victim of rape, or you find the victim of defilement, it is please encourage that you take the person to the nearby hospital, basically, for a test to be taken upon to determine the incidences and the rest, and so the semen of whoever did it, and also the pressure of how it had happened certainly will be analyzed by the medical team, and then that will form as part of medical evidence. Because as we stated, without evidence you cannot prove cases in court. Without evidence you cannot get a conviction for a perpetrator.
We're talking about going to the police, victims.
So you go to the health center, you get a medical report, and then you take it to the police. So that tries to strengthen the case, so that tries to bring evidential, circumstances and elements into the situation, so that you use evidence to prosecute the perpetrator of the offense. And so rather than doing the wash of the victim or trying to make the victim look nice, which is important, but it's also good to preserve evidence, because evidence basically is key, as the case may be. And there are sociocultural norms in society basically that tries to impede the rights of women, especially the communities that you are. Please speak out. It's important that the relevant ministry or departments are responsible for this get this information and try to also still take care of this. Intimate partners violence, which is very important and which is dynamic. The domestic violence is also very important. You should also still know that it's a crime against the state, basically. And so we do understand that couples will have their issues, or partners will have their issues, as the case may be. But nevertheless, we should know that this is also a crime against the state. And so there are certain things that can be negotiated, there are certain things that can be discussed, but there are certain things also that cannot be compromised. So when you have cases of rape, defilement, when you have female genital mutilation, you have all these kind of issues, it's important that you report. Even in the case of domestic violence, you may not put charges, or you may not have charges against or file charges against the perpetrator, as the case may be, but the person should be made to sign an undertaking, towards ensuring that such acts do not repeat itself again, so that we can protect the rights and dignity of our fellow human beings, especially our either gender, male or female. So for me, this is the little brief about SGBV, and I don't know if there are questions or inquiries or comments, then we can take it off into a bit for now. Courage. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. This is so insightful. Thank you so much. In case you're just joining us, this is the CGWCI Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Response Desk. With me on this broadcast is Fikih Obaro. He is the program manager of FIDA Nigeria. He has touched every part of SGBV, which is sexual gender-based violence, and the VAPP law. Now, if you have questions, just drop your questions. He's going to respond to every question. And please, every individual in this country, not just in Delta State, needs to know everything he has talked about. So please do well to share this video. And I have a question that I want to ask. You touch almost every part, but there is this thing that really is bothering me. I had a case of a 10-year-old girl that was defiled. I saw the case on Facebook. The girl cried out that the younger sister, who was born with a hole in her heart, that happened 2 years ago. She was 10 years old, and she was brutally, defiled. She was defiled on her way to her grandmother's house. When I saw the case, the Delta State coordinator called me. She was like, can we work on this case? I told her that the problem I have with picking up cases like this is many times when they offer the victim's family money, they tend to withdraw from the case. I don't charge anybody when I pick my cases. None of the people I have ever handled their case can say, I gave Courageous Girls, Women and Children Initiative 1 naira. We use our money as an organization to push for these cases. Now, I said, okay, tell the victim's elder sister who posted the information on Facebook to call me. She called me and I asked her, what have you done? She said they are in the house crying. I said, no. First thing to do, take her to the nearest police station. They will send a police station, a police officer with you to take you to the nearest hospital. So they went there, and immediately the police officer took her to the nearest hospital, and she was examined and treated. Now, this boy that raped this girl, that defiled this girl, you know, she's a minor, 10-year-old. The girl can recognize this boy, but she doesn't know his name. She doesn't know where he lives, but he knows that he used to come to the nearby uncompleted building close to their house with his friends to smoke in their home. So he described, but the parents couldn't. So first thing I did, I took my psychologist, my counselor. We drove down from Delta State to Ifite-Okuzo in Anambra State. That was the first time. My first time of ever going to Ifite-Okuzo. I've never been there. It was this case that took me there. We were able to trace the family through communication on phone. So after visiting the family, my psychologists and counselors, they had a session with her, because the mother told us that she has already started having nightmares. She would just scream from her sleep. And you know, is this post-traumatic stress disorder? That's one of the things. That's the resultant effect of, you know, the sexual abuse. So that is it. We just we launched into actions. We worked with the police. We worked with the village vigilante. We wrote petitions to the Anambra State Commissioner of Police. We worked closely with the police, and after some months, this boy was arrested. The boy was like, he told the police that he never believed that they can never arrest him, because when this guy gave a description of the culprits to the vigilante, they said they know him. Yes, they said they know him. That is always off and on the community. Romy, they don't even know where he stays, but he's always around. So after some months, they got him arrested. Immediately they took him to the state CID, and he was supposed to appear before the magistrate court at ETJ. Yes, ETJ in Anambra State. That morning, as they were going to call, the mother called me that we're going to court and all that. We provided vehicles. They are taking the culprit to court. I said, fine. Whatever happens, let me know. Because I don't stay in Anambra State. I live in Delta. Do you know that after some minutes, the mother called and was crying. The child was almost fainting. Because the child is filled with so much fear. Whenever she sees this culprit, she will be so afraid. So when the next thing they told me, they said the guy escaped from court. How possible is that? No, how possible is that the guy escaped from court? I told the IPO, I said, Madam, I will hold you responsible. I think she was the only police officer that escorted the culprit there. I said, you are not even supposed to be the only one to escort this culprit to the court. I will hold you responsible. I started writing petitions upon petitions upon petitions, working with the police, working with the vigilante. After 8 months, this boy was rearrested. I was happy, because that boy is a terror out there. So I'm coming on. No, I said I have a question that I want to ask. So what happened? After arresting this boy, immediately the magistrate called to the case to High Court, so that it can be treated and judgment delivered. After she went to court once, I called her during the next, when the case was adjourned to, I called her, I said, ma, please, remember your case is next tomorrow. The day before the case, I said, madam, remember your case is next tomorrow. You have to appear and ensure that your daughter gets justice. Because if we don't tame this kind of people in the society, it will cause more harm. If you rape number 1 and go free, you go and rape number 2. Then rape will become your lifestyle. thereby perpetuating harm in the society, causing a lot of havoc. So she said, no ma, I will go. She didn't spend 1 naira from the everything. Even it's me that will even send her money. She did spend her 1 naira in this case. That day came. In the evening, I called her to know how the case went. She was like, madam, I forget. I said, but I called you yesterday to remind you that the case is today. I called the IPO and she said the case was adjourned to a certain date. I said, madam, they have adjourned this case, so I don't want to hear that you forgot. She said, no, I will not forget. When the day started approaching, I called and called. This woman started ignoring my call. He said, madam, I beg. When she picked, madam, I beg, I don't tire. I don't want to go court again. She police don't hold him and he did prison. I said, madam, the boy, see, that boy have not been convicted though. The fact that he has not been convicted, he's even still innocent.
Yeah.
He's still innocent until convicted.
Yeah.
So you have to ensure your daughter gets justice. He said, I beg, I don't want to go. Me, I'm not from Anambra State. I don't understand Igbo. I don't speak Igbo. I don't know whether this woman has gone to collect money and she has decided to just let the case slide. And you know, I was hot because I spent so much in this case. I was emotionally, as in everything in me was involved in this case. And this woman decided to just trash it like that. I felt so bad. I called a friend, he's a son. I spoke to him. He said, Courage, this case, there's a way this case is. You don't understand their language. You don't even know whether this woman has gone to compromise. I will just I'll just advise you to just let it slide. Yeah. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, okay. I was so hot, I was so heartbroken. I just blocked their lines. And that is it. But I feel so bad because this child is a child with a special condition. She has a hole in the heart. When I did the case, I was even looking around for foundations, organizations that treat heart issues so that they can just sponsor her treatment. I suggested to this one, say, no, madam, I don't want those one. Maybe they know. I remember say somebody for this village, when go do the operation, he die. So I don't want. I said, madam, don't say that. I tried as much as I can to help. Now, we know that the VAPP law has been passed in Delta and some states like 35 or 36 states. And I don't know if it has been passed in Anambra State. It has been passed. And I know that this case is a case against the state. Now, in a situation whereby the parents of the victims, the parents or guardians of the victim tend to compromise, is there a way that the case can still go on? Can the states, can Anambra State government say we're picking up this case and the victim will eventually get justice?
Okay. It's simple. See, laws are made for men, and men are also expected to abide with laws. So it's why your case is pathetic, or why the case is pathetic, we must also still understand that when you get into court, there is what we call prosecutorial, dilemmas. Okay. So a prosecutor basically works on the investigation of the police, and he works basically, and that is the main reason why if it is a case before the High Court, the DPP advice is always sought before it does. So the DPP looks at it at that stage and sees if there were enough evidence to substantiate the claims or not, and if there is enough evidence, and then criminal proceedings can no comments as the case may be. The problem with this, the problem with families, from families, there are two approaches in this situation. One, when you don't have enough evidence, or when you have families that have compromised against the state towards ensuring that the evidence is whittled down or is watered down, as the case may be, the problem is that when you call in those witnesses to come in, they become hostile witnesses, and so when they are expected to give testimonies in favor of the victim, they turn against the victim and so it's against the perpetrator, and you have already foreclosed these people as your witnesses, thinking that certainly they are going to do that. And this one is even good enough. She has started withdrawing from court. There are those that will be following you to go to court, and when it's time for her to go to the witness box, she starts telling you that story entirely. What would you do then? So it's a little bit difficult then, and as we said, every single thing is based on the evidence that is provided against this person. That is on one side. Two, the state can now term a hostile witness, or can now term the families of the relations of whoever they have done. You can now term them as accomplices.
Okay.
As accomplices, and so certainly they could arrest them as accomplices, or to the crime, and since they want to subvert justice, as the case may be, but it's still then the evidence. So how are you going to prove that they are subjected to justice? You understand? How are you going to prove it? How are you going to prove that money's changed hand? How are you going to prove that? So it's another issue on its own. So these are some of the issues that makes us not to have good conviction rates on cases, especially gender-based violence cases generally, because the society itself is also a problem. The society tries to help or tries to shield their families. There are some communities you can't just enter to arrest people also. You understand? Once you get there, no matter the offense, unless it is a capital offense to them, which is like murder. Apart from that, in most cases, they want to settle it within the community and all these things. So these are some of the challenges and some of the difficulties as it gets maybe. But I think the fear that can be used, or it can be used, is for you to tell the conspirators now that they are the ones have done hostile now, like collude now, to tell them that you are going to be charged as conspirators to this offense. They are going to be charged as conspirators, accomplices. So I don't think any rational person, may want to start going through that hurdle, as the case may be. But there's also another issue: protection of the victim and protection of the survivor. So when these issues come, what are the mechanisms that are put in place to ensuring that the survivor is protected, from these particular issues, as the case may be? The person may not can return home. Certainly, the family has done against him. So what are the places? What are the things put in place? And so this is where CSOs come in. This is where civil society actors, those that run shelters, those that run safe homes, this is where they come in towards ensuring that for the time being, such persons are put in safe homes and safe harbors, towards ensuring that their lives are not threatened. As the case may be. But it's a whole lot. You also need the police to also provide protection. There's also witness protection. Enforceable witness protections in Nigeria. So these are some issues. So it's a little bit, it's dynamic, and it's strange, and it's not something that you can get from the textbook. So as it goes practically, the solutions that can be provided at that point. So those are my 2 cents.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you. This is so insightful. I'm so happy to hear everything. I feel much relief, getting those details from you. Now, the last one, because we're going to run out now. The last one is, please remember to drop your questions. Just drop your questions in the comment section. He will attend to all the questions now or after the broadcast. Now, violence against intimate persons. Most times, people tend to feel it's just physical. When you say violence against intimate persons, domestic violence, my husband beat me, my wife beats me, they don't feel that's the only violence. But it also comes in other forms, even emotional and all that. Can you just throw a little light on it?
Yeah, of course, but the main reason why we always put physical violence, because it's easier to prove.
Yes.
It's easier to prove. It's a little bit difficult to prove psychological violence or emotional violence. Unless where you can only prove emotional violence or psychological violence is where that violence has made the person to lose economic fortunes.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Which we can substantiate the fact that probably the person had a running business, the business was running well, as a result of the violence and the rest, the person had to, and you have to now go to medical records, medical history. You have to do a kind of psychiatric test or something to show that the person has lost mental balance and all those things, which has affected his business. And in such a case, you are claiming for damages.
Okay.
It's not a criminal. You're not going criminal in that area.
Okay.
Because it's a little bit difficult to prove psychological, emotional. There's certainly violence against intimate partner violence is not only physical, there's emotional violence, psychological violence, emotional. Basically, the person has lost her thoughts. The person, used verbal abuses, on the person, and so let's say that the person has lost her well-being or his well-being, as the case may be.
Self-worth.
Self-worth. Thank you. Self-confidence. Has lost those kind of things, and the rest. Psychologically, it affects the person's thinking, thoughts, mental state, thought of mind. As the case may be, it goes into that way, it affects the person's thought of mind and the rest. And then you have assault. Assault basically, and assault itself could also be verbal. Could also be verbal, use of foul languages and the rest. And then before you go into the actual part, which is battery, which is the beating, the physical beating, as the case may be. So they are all forms of intimate partner violence. Sorry, they are all ingredients of intimate partner.
How about financial?
Yeah, that is economic.
Okay.
That's economic violence when you starve your partner. When you starve your partner from the needed funds, especially if you are the man that is the breadwinner of the house. So they are expected, that you are financial. You are obligated to provide financial support to the family. So when you starve or when you withhold it, it becomes economic violence, because certainly you are not providing your financial rules, or you're not paying financial rules in the house, and then that would lead to frustration for both the woman and the children in the house. So that is economic violence. And then there's also something in the VAPP law which I failed to mention, which talks about abandonment. So with the VAPP law now, there are penalties for abandonment.
Okay.
So when you abandon your family and you disappear and you run away and you economically make them not viable, as the case may be, whenever you come back or whenever you return back, charges can be put against you for abandonment. So there are certain things that you need to pay in terms of abandonment, so ensuring that your families are not abandoned, as the case may be. So abandonment of family, it's now a crime under the VAPP law. But it's something that you get with an option of a fine, so it's not a capital
it's not a capital offense.
Yeah, but certainly it's now a crime, abandonment of family, as it is, maybe even abandonment of properties.
Abandonment of properties.
Yeah, if you how will I put it? The properties that they are supposed to those are the areas where the woman now has grant for divorce.
Okay.
You get it. You now link this to marital, and now link this to divorce. Because at the end of the day, there are two ways in terms of intimate partner violence. It's either the perpetrator is charged to court, or the other party files for divorce.
Okay.
So when you file for divorce, it now becomes a civil suit.
Okay.
When you file against the perpetrator, basically, then it becomes a criminal offense.
Okay.
But you know that in Nigeria, most everybody opts for the civil part.
Yes, divorce and settlement.
Divorce and settlement.
And the thing is, in Nigeria, most times they don't settle normal abroad, when people have this kind of issues in their marriages, and they are opting for divorce, they have kids. What they do is there is a certain amount of money that is given to the woman, or maybe the man who is the victim, or the woman who is the victim, to care for their children. But in Nigeria, I've never seen any case. I remember this Peter Okoye, P Square, one of the brothers' case. Yeah, the woman I think she was requesting for some certain amount of money and all that. But the way Nigeria, sorry to say, I know you're a lawyer, but Nigeria judiciary, yes, which is also the way everything went, she didn't get one thing.
Yeah, of course, certainly. Our society is patriarchal. You cannot deny that. It's patriarchal. So certainly the society also supports me. But don't also forget that even in these societies that are matriarchal, that support women's rights and the rest, don't also forget that women are also taking advantages of those things, and are also committing violence against men, which is not also still seen in this perspective. You see a woman who is aiming over her husband's wealth, and for every little thing, you use that as an opportunity to also still break down your husband. And don't also forget that women also promote gender-based violence. because why the man could be seen assaulting the wife or battering the wife. What
Which
about
is physical.
Which is physical? What about the psychological violence that the woman has perpetrated against the man? You know, such things are not also still looked at. So it's dynamic. It's not something that, you know, it's straight. You have to look at it from, you know, all aspects. But what we're trying to see basically is that whether you're a man or you're a woman, you know, it's wrong. There are laws against this, and there are laws that protect either gender. But the only problem we have in Nigeria is that how many men can go to the police station to report that my wife beats me?
I don't think there is anyone that does that.
So these are some of the issues. And then please let's also still remember the fact that when you say domestic violence, which we now call intimate partners violence, is not limited to married couples.
Okay.
Boyfriend and girlfriend, when they sit down, when they live together, you are still affected to it.
Okay.
So it's not only because you are a married man or you're a married woman. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
So it affects as long as there is a kind of sexual relationship between such persons and the rest. Even if you don't live together, your girl comes to visit you and you pound on her, or your guy comes to visit you, or you go and meet your girl at the hotel, or your girl comes to your hotel and something happens, it's all termed as domestic violence, because you must prove that there is a sexual relationship between both parties. So it's not limited to we are married.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. This session is everything. Thank you so much, Barrister Fikih Obaro. We appreciate you. Thank you for making this session so explicit, as in so detailed and insightful. We appreciate you. In case you're just joining us, this is the CGWCI Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Response Desk. You know, where you bring in all your questions, all your issues about SGBV. You know, by SGBV, I mean sexual gender-based violence. So I encourage you to drop your questions. Drop your questions in the comment sections. He's going to be there to attend to every question. And if you can't drop your question, maybe you don't want your identity to be known, just send your question or whatever you want to talk about to the inbox. He's going to see it also and respond to whatever question or issue, you know, that is bothering you. So all our viewers, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much to Barrister. You
In this context, I'm not a barrister.
Okay.
But I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You know, I appreciate you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for, you know, making the session so detailed. Thank you. Drop your questions. We'll join you again next week, you know, on the same SGBV issue, but another perspective. Bye for now.
Right.